So guys, I never thought the day would finally come, but Tesla has done something that could really change the way we view the company as a whole. They are now offering their very first sub-premium version of a car, the Model 3, with the most bare-bone option of it all. Now before we get into all the details, let's look back at their original plan and what they had offered to the market at that time. The Model 3 was advertised as being the cheapest, most affordable EV in their lineup, starting at just $35,000 USD. This was for their baseline model, which brought many new and modern technology, but would exclude some premium items saved for higher trims. There were things such as vegan leather seats, fog lights, and panoramic glass roof. They were a few items that was planned to be excluded from the $35,000 vehicle, but as luck had put it, they decided to ease the production pains and give us these items for free. So then, instead of the metal roof and fabric seats, we got leather, we got glass, exactly as the long range and the performance trims. Now during this time, as they were also offering it to the Canadian market, there were a few loops that both countries had to go through to get this car exactly in this configuration. So although Tesla had advertised this car as being the main seller, it was actually the next car up that they were focusing on. It was the car that had the best margins and the car that was the bread and butter of the company. This was the $38,000 Model 3 Standard Range Plus, which included all the bells and whistles of the standard range with the little extra on top. What they eventually did for both countries is, instead of having them compete, they decided to hide the base $35,000 model behind a wall, and the only way to get it is to call in and request it directly through a rep. Now believe it or not, things even got more complicated for the Canadian side, as they started offering a compliance Model 3 with the sole purpose of qualifying for the federal tax credit. This had a much lower base price, but had a very clear distinction from the US made standard range vehicles. It was limited to a measly 93 miles on a full charge, completely crippling the battery through software, making it essentially a car that nobody ever wanted to buy. Now like I said, this is just a compliance vehicle, and Tesla would never have thought that anybody in their right mind would pick up a car with 93 miles or roughly 150 kilometers, but there were some unlucky folks that really did, and it really affected them on the secondhand or resale market. If you want to know more about this unicorn vehicle, as well as the slowest 2024 Model 3 Highland ever built, go check out my previous video. I'll drop that in the description below and up top there. But regardless, in either case, the car started out as promised at $35,000. This is the best EV at that time that you can possibly buy. Unfortunately, however, this didn't really last long, as the pricing structure didn't allow for them to improve on the design and build without taking a major loss. So after about a year, they dropped the standard range model entirely and only kept the more expensive standard plus version. This didn't sound as bad, as the price was still relatively cheap at that time, but as the year went on, the MSRP crept higher and higher, and now with the inflated interest rate, it became extremely difficult to own even the cheapest Model 3. Now before we all jump to conclusions about Teslas being cheap and now is the best time to buy, just keep in mind that not everyone lives in the US and not everyone qualifies for the federal tax credit. For those living in Europe, in Asia, and South America, prices are heavily inflated due to import, and the MSRP set out by Tesla is substantially higher to combat the currency losses against the US dollar. And then on top of that, things are just not as easy. The average income is not going to support those wanting to buy a Model 3, especially those that start out at 50,000 US dollars equivalent. This is just not feasible, and Tesla really had to do something about it. Lately, Tesla has been doing a lot of adjustments for pricing, implementing system and loopholes to get the lowest price for each respective country. And although this completely counters my point in the previous video about simplifying, unifying all trims across the world, this is the only possible way to cater to each market. Recently, Tesla had launched a cheaper but much slower version of the Model 3 dubbed Category A. This is only specific to the Singaporean market to reduce the cost of the entitlement fee for owners. Then they also recently introduced a slower version of the Model Y rear wheel drive, also to reduce reduce the special consumption tax put out by this country. Tesla has done this to various other countries, all the catering around the income level of the locals. All of this is also done to get around the loopholes and all the restrictions that the government has set in place. Generally here, what we have been seeing is that the company has been doing one of many things. They have either reduced the cost across the board, making the models substantially cheaper right from the beginning. This is done to put them exactly within the price bracket, the price threshold that the government has set in place. A clear example is the government in Canada setting the top bracket being $49,999. So anything below that is going to qualify for the federal tax rebate. The other few things that they may be doing is reducing the battery capacity, software limiting it, or reducing the acceleration and speed overall, and then pricing it lower from the beginning as well. And depending on the leniency of the government, Tesla could plan to release a software unlock in the future, allowing the full battery capacity or the full acceleration boost to owners. This is going to be another revenue source for the company and another way they can knock down the price of MSRP. However, with all this, you'll notice one thing that they haven't done, and that is change any visual parts of the car. The outside, the inside stays exactly the same regardless of what price model and what trim it is. This is the most critical part of the experience, regardless of what the mechanics and what the battery is. As long as the interior and the exterior looks just as good and as premium, owners will continue buying the cars. This has been the case for the last couple of years. Regardless of the mechanical components changing on the inside, the experience stays exactly the same, and this is what incentivizes owners to buy. So be it the battery type, LG versus Panasonic, the suspension coming from the performance to the rest of the trims, or even the straight line performance, which the majority of EV owners really enjoy. As long as the car drives well, is reliable, and feels just as premium, the majority of owners could care less what trim they really have. But unfortunately, even though this has been a trend for the last couple of years, it's no longer the case, and it all starts off with the country of Mexico. This may ultimately be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your view of the company and how the product turns out, but this is something that would definitely be offered to various other countries in the near future, and it may not be long until you see it in your design studio. Tesla has recently launched a much more basic version of the Model 3, completely differentiating from the other trims. This version here caters towards the lower income countries, allowing them to get into the car that ultimately pioneered the electric vehicles. The car will be priced at an equivalent $35,000 and removes many of the premium features you would see in all the other trims. Leather seats will now be replaced by fabric cloth, completely removing the heated and cooled functions from the front and the rear. The steering wheel material stays the same, although no longer including the heated wheel option. The rear console no longer includes a display, no active ventilation. Everything is now set manually by hand and includes just the USB charging ports. In terms of build quality and ambience, it looks like this has taken a hit as well. Acoustic glass for noise insulation is now only on the front windows, whereas it's on all windows and glass with the other trims. The sound system has also been reduced, going from 17 speakers, 2 amps, and 2 subwoofers down to only 9 speakers and a single amp. And finally, the most unique spaceship look of the interior, the ambient lighting that wraps around the dash and doors has gone from RGB with thousands of different colors down to just a single non-adjustable white strip. Now, of course, this is not the end of the world. It's actually quite great that Tesla is now giving options for different countries and different income levels, allowing them to get into the market of Teslas and EVs in general. But the biggest worry here for investors and owners is after the expansion outside of Mexico, that this is going to devalue the brand of Tesla. Making a more sub-premium car like this is going to put it into the category of Corollas and Honda Civics. Tesla has been known to provide a premium offering, although not luxury. It is not in the same category as the mentioned brands. They are more comparable to BMWs and Mercedes, but now giving fabric and removing a bunch of these features is now going to start feeling like such. Who really knows where this is going to eventually take us, if it's going to be exclusive to Mexico only, or is this going to eventually expand outside to various different low-income country markets. I would not say that the Model 3 and Model Y is on the same level of luxury as Lexus and Mercedes, but they are still considered premium vehicles, and it would be best to save the Model 2 to be comparable to the Toyota Corollas and Honda Civics. So there you have it. This is the very first car that Tesla has put fabric in, and the very first car that has removed a ton of different features from its premium trims. I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Is this a good move that Tesla is doing, and would you buy a car that has removed substantial features and put fabric in compared to just going all out and buying one that has the best features? We will start hearing and seeing a lot more of this once owners start taking delivery, and a lot of comparisons are going to happen between the fabric offering versus the premium leather offering. I will be keeping an eye on all the details and providing you the latest updates, so make sure you stick around and hit that subscribe and that bell notification if you haven't already done so, and follow me on Twitter. Over there you guys will get the latest, and you guys can chat with me, DM with me, and I will respond as quickly as possible. But this should be it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is John once again. Peace out.